Washington State transfer Cedric Coward has decided he wants to play college basketball at Duke. Incredible news for John Shire and his coaching staff.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. Thanks so much for being here with us today on Tuesday, April 29th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics, talking a whole lot about what's going on with the Duke men's basketball team in the offseason that they're having so far. Big news last night as Duke picked up the commitment from Cedric Coward, the Washington State transfer, who says, if I'm playing college basketball, Durham is the place I want to be. Worth noting, he will continue to go through the NBA draft process. So there is still a world where maybe he doesn't even ever wear that Duke jersey in a real game. We'll talk about all of that and so much more with our good friend Conor O'Neill from Devils Illustrated throughout the course of today's show. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. You can listen to us each and every day. We ask that you please leave us a 5-star rating and written review, particularly on that Apple Podcast platform. The algorithm loves when you take some time to do that for us over there on Apple Podcasts. Also, you can watch our show each and every day on YouTube. Go ahead and like this video on YouTube, share it with your friends, subscribe to our YouTube channel. So appreciative of all the support that you give us here on Locked On Blue Devils. So without further ado, the aforementioned Conor O'Neill is here with us on today's show, discussing the news and happenings with this Duke basketball team. I hope you're doing well, Conor. Here we are just a few days removed from May, and maybe we're going to continue to get some more answers about Duke's squad going into next season.
Yeah. I think they're, in a way, we know more about them than we did at this time last year, just because the returners, smaller freshman class, half the size, really, when you talk about 3 against 6. And then Cedric Coward answers a pretty big piece of the equation where you have a veteran guard, might be able to play some initiator / point guard, might be able to be off the ball and kind of play a Con Knipple or Tyrese Proctor type of role. So yeah, things come together quickly when you have 5 returning pieces that you think are going to factor in pretty well, and then when you have 3 freshmen coming in that you think are going to be contributors on different levels. So we've got some clarity here.
No, for sure. And it's exciting to see and be able to talk about and kind of think about what the Duke squad would look like. Cedric Coward himself was in a field of 68 conversation last night already, fresh off the commitment. And there's a clip going out of him already being able to kind of list off every single player from this past year's team to this upcoming year's team. So he really seems dialed in. And I really enjoyed hearing him talk about his story coming from the Division III ranks all the way up to now playing for Duke. And when asked the question, did you ever see yourself in a scenario like this? He said, well, I just wasn't good, and I had to get better in that sort of real simple answer. But I kind of like the maturity and the answers that we got from him.
Yeah, and I think Jordan pointed it out last night on Twitter. There are some things that drive me crazy about the state of college athletics right now. But I think one of the coolest things is you get stories like this where a guy from D3 who would have had to been sitting out a year or two when transferring. He would have had to get a degree from somewhere and then transfer to be able to play immediately. Now it's easier for those diamonds in the rough to kind of float to the top. The cream rises to the top, and those guys can get found quicker. They can develop faster. And it's a cool story. I'm looking forward to getting to talk to him. I'm sure that will happen down the road. And then the caveat, if it happens, is he might wind up getting good feedback from the NBA. He might be, it'll be interesting to see what he does if he gets a combine invite, if he's able to go through it. I think he told Field that he's not cleared for full contact yet, but
So that's so interesting to think about as well with this Duke basketball team and his decision to still go through the NBA draft process versus, I'm fully into transferring to Duke. I wonder how much that, what is the likelihood ultimately, I guess is the question, that he ends up playing for Duke basketball.
Yeah, we just, you don't know. There's so many variables here, starting with his health, starting with, the old cliche when guys are going through this, it only takes one team to fall in love with him.
Yeah.
If one team interviews him at the combine, even if he's not able to go in the scrimmages and stuff like that, if he shoots well enough and one team that's picking, anywhere from, I don't think he's a projected lottery guy, but anywhere from 16 to 30, if they like him, they can tell him,
worth
hey,
the gamble. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's some moving parts here. It is, I guess, the comforting news for Duke fans there is Sion James was in the draft process last year too.
Yeah.
And I believe he was still in the draft, technically in the draft process when he committed to Duke, when he came on his visit, when he sat down with Jon Scheyer, when Duke kind of pitched him as, we think you are the missing link of what we need on next year's roster. He was still like thinking he might be a draft pick. So there's a little bit of that plays into this. We won't know until sometime in the next month when he has to withdraw his name.
Yeah, I mean, that decision deadline is June 15th, so that's still
it's earlier for college.
Okay, gotcha.
I think it's like May 28th, right around there. The June 15th one is for international prospects.
Okay, so then about a month that we're looking for Cedric Coward to make a decision like this. Yeah, because it was mid-May-ish when Sion James made the decision to come over and transfer to Duke, and so now we'll see Cedric Coward go through the same thing, and hopefully he's able to make the best decision for him. But obviously, if it's one that, hey, I'm playing for Duke basketball, I think that's a really big thing for this squad as they get set to go into next season. All right, let's take our first time out here on today's show and continue to talk about this big news once we return. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. One of my favorite parts and why I use Game Time is the all-in pricing feature, meaning you get no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Also, I love the fact that you can get a seat view in the app before you buy, so you know what to expect when you're going to the game. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Game Time is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, Conor O'Neill's here with us. We're talking about Cedric Coward making the decision to transfer to Duke basketball. When we look at his fit and kind of the player he is, we'll put his stats up from this past year on the screen for those watching us here on YouTube. How do you see him kind of forecasting into the fold for this Duke basketball team, given the type of player he is?
Right now, I think he's an off-ball guard / wing. I think you can put him out there at the 3 and have maybe Caleb Foster and Caden Boozer on the court with him. I don't know why that would necessarily. I don't see that happening very often, but I think it could. I see him more as a 2. I see him more as put either Caleb Foster or Caden Boozer on the ball, have Isaiah Evans, the 2 and 3
another
are kind
wing.
of, the 2 and 3 are kind of interchangeable in Duke's offense. I mean, both of them can initiate when in the P&Rs at the top of the key. I see him as a spot-up shooter. I mean, you look at those numbers and the 40% three-point percentage. It's exactly what Jon Scheyer wants when you think about the the 3 teams that John has put together, 2 of them have been elite shooting teams. The first year, not so much. We don't have to revisit that too much, but I think in an ideal world, this team shoots. I don't know if you can quite replicate how good of a shooting team last year's team was, but gets close to that at least, or repeats how good of a shooting team they were 2 seasons ago with Jared McCain and that type of team.
Yeah, when you shoot it well, that's such an added element to your team, and I mean that's obvious basketball there, but it makes Duke so dangerous, and it's been fun to watch over these last few seasons when they've had different guys on different nights really have amazing shooting performances. A couple of the Tyrese Proctor games this past season, Con Knipple was getting it going. Cooper Flagg had great 3-point shooting nights throughout the course of the year. Caleb Foster has shot good at percentages throughout certain times of his season, so. I think that's awesome. Looking at Cedric Coward, though, also when you see his numbers from a year ago, again, nearly 18 points a game, 40% shooting from 3, 84% from the free throw line. Really important, though, there at the very start, just 6 games played, averaging 33 minutes per game this past season for Washington State. You touched on the injury a little bit earlier, but I would imagine that's got to be a level of concern or a factor for anybody when you're jumping back into play.
Yeah, if you go to Devils Illustrated and read the story up on Cedric, there's a linked story to a feature. I believe it's from the Spokesman Review, which covers Washington State out in Pullman.
Yeah.
It goes into detail, pretty significant detail about how the injury happened. It was a practice injury to his shoulder. He actually finished practice when it happened, and then woke up the next day and his arm was dead weight. And he went through the process of, reporting to the medical team. And eventually, you get MRIs, get imaging done and realize like your season's over. You just thought you had this little scrape in practice and all of a sudden you're done. So if you go and I would suggest reading that story from Greg Woods. Shout out. It was a really well reported story. It had some great quotes from Cedric in it. It's not every program will give you access to guys that have had season-ending surgeries, and so it's a good insight into kind of how he was having a great season and how Washington State was kind of set up for him to be a star, and that unraveled in the course of one November practice.
So you look at him and obviously overcoming this injury, getting back into action, whether that be at the NBA or the Duke level. Obviously, Locked On Blue Devils. Let's focus on the Duke side of things here. I think it's huge for them. This is a guy that can ideally slide into being one of your starting players out there on the floor and be ready to go with the experience that he's got at that next level. This is a guy that you would think raises the ceiling or the floor, a little bit for what this Duke team can do?
I think so. I think he's definitely a starter. Like I think you're talking about right now. If you take this roster as it is right now, I would think it's Caleb Foster, Cedric Coward, Isaiah Evans, Cam Boozer. I lean Malik Brown, but I've seen so many people say that Patrick Gongba is going to be the starting center. I still think it'll be Malik Brown.
Sure.
And we know they're both going to play a bunch of minutes. We know that they're interchangeable at the 5. We know that it's going to be a pretty healthy share between the two of them. And yeah, I think adding a 6'6" guard / wing to the mix, who's experienced, who can come in and theoretically play selflessly the same way that Sion James did this past season. I think that takes Duke further than if they had, say, found another freshman. I'll use Nate Ament as an example because he was obviously in the mix for so long with Duke.
Yep.
I think it's better to have Cedric Coward than Nate Ament. I think there's something to be said. I think this program saw the fruits of bringing in transfers in the way that they did last year, transfers that fit the mold, transfers that aren't going to be, searching for the biggest bag or the most playing time or shot diet that they can find. They want to come in and be a part of a winning program. I think that's what Duke has with Cedric Coward, and I think that's a better fit than somebody like Nate Ament, somebody inexperienced who's going to have to adjust to the way the college game is played.
He's the real deal, and I think he's going to be a big-time factor for the Duke team going into next season. We'll see if anything changes over the next few weeks with the NBA draft decision obviously looming for him. But nonetheless, it's big to hear a player say, I want to come play for you, and Duke got that opportunity yesterday from Cedric Coward. We'll go ahead and we'll take our final break here on today's show. A few more things to touch on when we come back. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the absolute best place to get in on all of the NBA playoff action. FanDuel right now is giving new customers an incredible way to get started. Right now, when you join FanDuel, you can place your first $5 bet and you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my favorite team or diving into those player props. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many different ways to bet on your favorite players. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. A couple of different games to be on the lookout for tonight in the NBA playoffs. FanDuel right now has the Indiana Pacers favored by 8.5 in Game 5 over the Milwaukee Bucks. Meanwhile, the Clippers, really tightly contested series with the Denver Nuggets. LA Clippers favored by 1.5 over Denver. All that more over on FanDuel. Don't miss out on the NBA playoffs. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. FanDuel is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, let's keep this thing going. We've got Conor O'Neill here with us from Devils Illustrated talking about the Duke basketball team now that they've got Cedric Coward announcing his commitment. We just saw Khaman Maluach declare for the NBA draft over the weekend. We'll get to that in just a moment. With this Duke squad, though, going into next season, I know they're getting a little bit active once again in a couple of high school seniors that would be college freshmen this upcoming season. Maybe there's going to be a surprise transfer portal target or two that a name emerges for Duke over the next few weeks. Regardless, they still have a couple of scholarships that ideally you go out and you try to use.
Yeah, they've got several. The limit based on the latest version of the House settlement that's still held up in court is going to 15 scholarships, an increase from 13 to 15. I don't think Duke uses all 15. I don't think many programs will be able to use all 15. You still need to have practice players, and it's going to be really hard to get somebody signed up to be your 13th, 14th, or 15th guy on the roster with a real, who wants a realistic shot at playing. But yeah, what the count now is 10 scholarships. If I'm not mistaken, I might be
in that ballpark. Yeah, I've got to update the chart myself.
I think the most likely scenario is Duke brings in somebody like Sebastian Wilkins, who they just offered a week or two ago, or Braden Hawthorne, a decommit from West Virginia, who I think is coming on a visit later this week. I think you bring in a freshman who's understands he's more of a developmental piece, who's not coming in thinking that he's going to have a quick avenue to 25 minutes a game. And I think you spend a year developing them. You spend a year getting them in certain situations that they can handle. Not saying that they're only going to be relegated to Spencer Hubbard duty, but, only 20-ish point leads with 3 minutes left against an ACC team, something like that. I think there's value in that. I think there's value in taking a year to figure out if somebody like that is worth building with next year, or, it is basically professional sports telling them to move on. They'd be better off moving on at another school. That's just that seems to be the next addition Duke will make. I think they try to get a center in the transfer portal. I think that where Duke is a really good spot with Patrick and Malik. I think you want to have a third option that isn't Cam Boozer playing out of position, or got their third option last year when Malik was out was Mason Gillis playing there because they didn't want Cooper Flagg to have to go from the 4 to the 5. I don't know if they'll feel the same way about Cam Boozer. I think they will. So I think you're looking at trying to get a raw, not so much a project, but kind of a project at the 5 who can develop behind Malik and Pat. And understand also that this is Malik's last season of eligibility. If Pat Gongba has the type of season that he can have, he might be gone. All of a sudden, going into the next season, that guy could be your number one center.
Yeah. No, I think you're exactly right. When you look at kind of the needs for the Duke team, building out the rest of the roster, front court depth is going to be one of those big ones, given the injuries for some of these players. And then also it's always a necessity to be able to have some big bodies out there. That's why Duke was so successful this past year, and so many successes or reasons was because of how big they were. And then also, I don't think it ever hurts to have more than enough ball handlers and guys that can help you kind of get it. And if a guy was to be a rather experienced player, I think that'd be awesome for this Duke team too.
Yeah. It's just center and point guard are the two positions that everybody wants in the portal. And so I didn't do that well in my economics classes, but I at least understood supply and demand. And the demand is high for both of those. The supply is little. That means the cost is pretty great. And that's why a lot of them are already snatched up. I mean, if you look at the other team I cover, Wake Forest needed a pretty significant overhaul through the portal. The first guy they got was their center from Valparaiso. And if you look at their roster now, the only thing missing is a backup center, and they frankly don't have the money to go out and get a backup center. Like with where the market is, with what is required if you're going to get a center through the transfer portal. Now, I'm not saying Duke is in the same financial position as Wake Forest. We clearly know that they're not. I'm just trying to stress, like,
this is what the market looks like. And yeah.
And as I say all the time, there's two forms of currency in recruiting the portal. There's literal currency, and there's minutes and role. And if you can deliver both of those, I think you can get a center. Duke is a little short on being able to deliver the minutes and role for any centers that are established, decent college players already. Like nobody's signing up to be option C behind two guys that we know Duke is going to play a lot. Nobody wants to sign up for a bunch of DNPs and 5 minutes here, 8 minutes there.
Well, option A in that spot this season for Duke was Maluach, and he's now made the decision to declare and enter the NBA draft. This was expected all along, projected lottery pick. I'm excited over the next few days and weeks. We'll kind of dive into our end of season reviews and talk about the players that they were on the court here with Locked On Blue Devils. But for you, Connor, when you think about the player he was, the person he was that you got to be around, what are you going to remember about getting to cover Khaman Maluach for a year now that he's off to the league?
In a sentimental way, just how grateful he was to be at Duke. I mean, he told us so often how much he appreciated the fan support, how much he loved being in Cameron. I had a couple times in the locker room throughout the year where he's telling me that's the most electric atmosphere he's ever been in. And it's like, well, wait, you played in the Olympics. And he's like, yeah, but 50% of the crowd at the Olympics, they're cheering for the other team. Like, right. 99% of Cameron is cheering for Duke most nights. So he was really fun to cover. It's tough seeing how physical he played against Alabama and Arizona in Newark, and then how he wasn't able to bring that to San Antonio. That will be one of the stories that we talk about for years about why this Duke team did not win the national championship. It'll be a tough talking point, but you can realistically talk about that while also talking about how good he was for 39 games. When you take the full scope of the season. and what he gave Duke, how far he came defensively from, like, you know, people at Duke will tell you they trusted him, and he'll tell you that they trusted him to move his feet on the perimeter and guard guards. We didn't see that until later in the season.
Right.
And how much that raised Duke's ceiling defensively was huge. And then the one that I want to purge from my memory is the NC State game, and I've never seen anything like that, and I don't want to think about that anymore. And here I am bringing it up.
It's getting a little sick on the court, man. It happened from time to time. No,
yeah.
A joy, and obviously when he took over the camera and and all the behind the scenes all access videos that Duke would put out there, a really funny personality. It seemed like his teammates really loved him, and excited to see what he can be at the next level, and excited for the year that we had with him at Duke basketball. One player has ever worn jersey number 9 for the Duke basketball team, and it was Khaman Maluach, man. So there's going to be a fun little trivia question in 50 years for people who was the first. Maybe it's done that number. So,
yeah, I was so happy to get that story in San Antonio. I wanted to do it all year, and it just it slipped through the cracks on me. But I finally was able to go down the list of all the guys wearing new jersey numbers.
Yeah.
And Khaman just said he took what I think he told me he took that jersey because it was the only one available to him or something like that. It was just like, oh, okay, you're the last guy here. All right, you just
there you
okay.
go.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun stuff. Well, Conor, it's always great to see you and chat with you about everything going on at Duke. You've talked a lot about some of the stories that you've got over at Devils Illustrated. Tell us a little bit more about that and how people can support you.
Yeah. Go over to duke.rivals.com. There's a story about Cedric Coward up. There's a story on the football side about Darian Mensah and what he needs to improve on in the next 3 months. As we launch into the summer months and the off season for both programs. Go check it out. Subscribe. We have a deal running right now that if you're a first time subscriber, you sign up for 1 month and you get the next 3 free.
Incredible.
So you get 4 months of access for the price of 1. I think it runs for about 5 more days, but go take advantage of it now. Go check it out and then make sure you get into the I think it's Devil Insider.
Yep.
The message board is where a lot of content, day-to-day content, just random musings and thoughts. Yeah, those wind up there.
All right, man. Obviously, I really appreciate the time. We'll do this again soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Conor O'Neill. He's joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Go support Devils Illustrated and everything going on over at duke.rivals.com. Be sure to also follow and subscribe to our podcast, Locked On Blue Devils, for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. We're on Instagram and TikTok as well. And then also you can check out us on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, share it with your friends. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.